Welcome to the Coach's Table Podcast, where coaches come to grow personally and professionally through real-world application and online education. Guys, with me today, I have Lance Dozier. Welcome, brother. How are you?
Doing good, man. Happy to be on the show and to be here.
Appreciate it. Yeah, I'm happy to have you here too. Lance and I actually played college football together in Minnesota at Bethel. Lance was a stud wide receiver. And so Lance does digital marketing at Virginia Tech. He is primarily responsible for football. So what does that look like? Kind of walk everybody through either day-to-day, week-to-week, in-season, out-of-season. You guys are extremely busy. What does that look like for you guys?
Yep. So we're kind of uniquely set up at Virginia Tech. We have 7 people that work in digital. And when you say the word digital, it can mean a lot of things to different people. So I'll break down the buckets we specialize in. So one of those is social media, and that's probably the most common thing when people think about social or think about the word digital. So we have Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, LinkedIn, and TikTok. So we have like 6 accounts for those, and we enjoy getting to post, stuff almost every day about our student athletes, our coaches, our tradition, our success, our great campus. So there's a lot to choose from, which we're fortunate to have. So that's one bucket. And then another bucket is email marketing. So we have newsletters that our fans sign up for that can, give them more information about football or basketball or women's sports, we have, I think, 9 total. So we have a ton, which is great. So we can really, specialize what people's interests are and kind of get to know what the user likes, and which helps us with, doing campaigns and things like that. Then we also have our ads. So digital advertising, we work with our partner, Pacquiao, who helps us with that regarding Facebook and Instagram. Yeah. So paid ads. We have 4 sports that are ticketed. So baseball, both men's, women's basketball, and football are the sports that we primarily focus on for ads. And then we have SMS, which is texting. So we have subscribers who sign up for text messages. We try to not to abuse that too much. That's a little bit more private, we feel like. So there's less content that, we push out on there, but it still is an important tool to use. And then our website, hokiesports.com. Take a lot of pride in that, making sure it's laid out in an efficient way, as well as a good way that people are looking for kind of day of. So not to poke fun at other schools, but they typically don't have someone who's managing it every hour. And that's what we do. So me and another coworker of mine, Damien, we tag team in and kind of lock things like this should be high during this certain period of time today. It should be low during this period of time. So, and that's kind of game related or maybe news related. We announced our spring game yesterday, so it was pretty high, obviously, on our page. It got a lot of views. It shouldn't be low. So we try to prioritize that. Then if we lose, like in a wrestling match, we lost last night to Pitt, unfortunately. So that was high at the time. So people could click on it to see, it's on AC Network at 7 o'clock. This is how you tune in. And then when the game is done and lost, we moved it off the front page because, we don't want to have, I think if there's, it's irrelevant anymore. So we really specialize in trying to keep it timely. I think that's helped a lot with, keeping high engagement on the main page. Yep. And then the mobile app, that's another thing we really take a lot of pride in. Hokie Sports is what the app's called. Yep. So fans can download that. That's where their tickets are. That's where they can find the schedule, for games, the roster, certain news. And we send a lot of app pushes, which is a little bit more common in the pro space. So we've enjoyed trying to model what some NFL teams do with sharing content, whether it's a video, a photo gallery, an article, things like that. So I was actually just sent one a little bit before this call. We welcomed 7 mid-year transfers. We've got some guys who kind of come all over the country to play football for us. So that's a cool moment, and wanted to get that out before our men's basketball game is tonight, which is at 7. We have a few of those guys who are going to be honored, during a timeout. So it's we're a big football school, so we like to get as much attention to those guys as we possibly can. So it's kind of a cool moment, and mention that too in the push. So that's the 5 things we specialize in. Again, most schools, when they hear digital, they're probably just thinking social media, maybe a little bit of website. So that the other buckets might be in marketing, might be in communications, might be in something else, but we have it all under one shop. We think it really streamlines that process and kind of pretty much makes this an agency for the other creative departments and external.
Yeah, absolutely. So, one thing I would love for you to kind of touch on here is talking about that, some people might get overwhelmed with all that. We
Sure.
have, all the social media outlets. We have a website. We have an app. We have email marketing.
Mm-hmm.
We have, text message marketing,
Mm-hmm.
and we do this for all this stuff. So, talk to me a little bit from your guys' perspective. What does the process look like? How many different softwares are you guys kind of using to edit, to keep everything on brand, to ensure that what you guys are putting out is, the style you want, the font, like all of that, right? Because a lot of people get overwhelmed by that. And
Mm-hmm.
then after that, the next question I have for you, if somebody was going to do this for them individually, like what would you recommend? Because if, in a department, for you guys that don't know, Virginia Tech is obviously a Power 5 D1 school. So you have a bunch of people that are working on this
Mm-hmm.
all at one time. So it's a little bit more manageable, right? Whereas if you're an individual, you're a player, you're a coach, you're Lance Dozier that has a personal
Mm-hmm.
brand, you're whoever, um, you don't have 50 people, 20 people that are working on it. So kind
Yep.
of, what's your guys' process? And then if you were an individual, what would you recommend from a process standpoint?
Yep. Yep. Good questions. Yeah, consistency is everything, right? So
Mm-hmm.
the more your brand's kind of out of whack, the worse it's going to be, regardless if you're a
Yeah.
school or a person. So we have like a standard like brand guidelines doc that we kind of abide by. That's our Bible, if you will.
Yep.
That does have fonts in there, like you said. That's an important
Mm-hmm.
component. Our colors is maroon, orange, and white.
Yep.
So typically every graphic you see is going to have, some of that feel. Doesn't have to have all those colors at the same time, but
Yeah.
that's super important. And, marketing, fundraising, ticketing, communications, video, like we all try to abide by that, so there's a lot of external communication that comes out. So we have to really hone that in. So I think that's probably the key is, trusting that brand guideline and kind of go off of that to build out your graphic templates and having like a end tag for a video, making sure that looks good and is on brand,
Yep.
as well as like a bug in the corner that says Virginia Tech or Hokies. So there's a few tools to kind of help brand that's perspective. So I'll jump into,
Yeah.
the personal perspective, then we'll come back to what other softwares we use. But,
Sure. Sure.
so I think, for a user that's trying to create their brand, kind of the same thing. I think if you have, fonts that are, the same, maybe you have one font, we have a few fonts, I think maybe 4 or 5 that we try to typically use. So I think if you're one person, maybe doing 2 or 3 would probably
Sure.
be
Yep.
good.
Yeah.
I think having, maybe the same like color overlay, like a filter is important. So if you're thinking about Instagram and about feed, you want to have it visually appealing. So if it's kind of a hodgepodge, it's not going to maybe look as great. So kind of having that same filter for every photo if you can. I mean, you might have to manipulate it a little bit for certain
Sure.
shots, but I think that's an important part. And then what's your captions? Are you going short and sweet? Are you kind of going long and informative? Are you using a lot of emojis?
Yep.
So there's a lot of ways to go about that. I mean, I think most people enjoy looking at emojis. I think there's
would you
Mhm.
recommend any? Because if you're building a personal brand, if you kind of maybe want a mixture of both, right? Where there's a long and informative one, and then there's a short and sweet one, and then this is just me doing my thing. Like, what would you kind of recommend? Would it be Reels, hard post, Instagram, and everybody's pushing Reels now, or have been for a while? So you're gonna get a lot more traction from that standpoint. Like, what is your kind of thought process recommendation from that?
Yeah, variety is important. Like I said, consistency is key, but so is variety. I think things get
Yeah.
stale when it's the same thing every time. So whether it's a quote
Yeah.
graphic and it's it's the same font and relatively the same picture, that's not going to hit that well. So I think variety is key. So like you said, maybe it's a video, maybe it is a reel, it's vertical size,
Yeah.
short and sweet. Maybe it's a long form video that's 16:9, kind of more cinematic,
Sure.
talking about whatever you're trying to do. So I think that's cool. I think, having a good cover photo is important too.
Yeah.
Just kind of comes back to those, the simplicity of having, just one of the 2 fonts, having the same kind of color scheme, that same filter.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's important. That's, the same thing for us too, if you kind of post the same picture all the time, it's going to kind of go fall on deaf ears.
Yeah.
So whether that's an ad, whether that's just a social post for a basketball team or something. So I think variety is key there for sure.
Sure. Absolutely. And then, so let me make sure I'm understanding this, and for people listening too, if you want to do this, if you're gonna say, hey, you know what, I think it's important for everybody to build a personal brand. I think first and foremost that's important because, like it's the same thing as your reputation. It's the same thing as your character, right? And if somebody can go on your page or pages, right, and they can get educated, they can get informed, they can get entertained. I think that's a huge component of it as well. Then they will engage with you, which is awesome, and then you have the potential to help more people. But personal branding is becoming a big thing. NIL obviously is going to have a huge thing in personal branding. And that, a lot of people, with NIL now and everybody's looking to get paid and just not only the athletes, but everybody else as well. Right. Like Lance Dozier works for Virginia Tech and has for a while, but he also is Lance Dozier and could do freelancing stuff and could, do other things. So if somebody goes on his page and like, hey, I like what you do. Could you do this for me? Or could you help me? Or like, he could leverage his skill set in that manner. But if he doesn't have a personal brand and nobody knows what he does, then, people aren't going to ask you to help them because they don't know what you do. Right. So if you're going to do that, I think everybody should have a personal brand. I think most people are leaning towards that anyways, to market their services in whatever capacity it may be, whether it's graphic design, whether it's, videography or videographers or editing or in my case, training, things of that nature. Right. So anyways, if you're not, you should. It's never too late to start. The big thing that you said, and I think a lot of people really need to hone on this, is consistency is important. Consistency is extremely important because I look at it, and tell me what you think of this analogy. All right. I came up with this the other day. I look at it from this perspective. Okay. If I go fishing, right, and I only throw one line in the water every hour, I'm probably not going to catch that many fish, right? But if I go fishing and I throw my line in the water 35 times, I'm probably going to catch more fish. If I throw 5 lines in the water 35 times in an hour, I'm probably going to catch a lot more fish, right? So that's the analogy that I use from a posting standpoint. And what I mean by that is if you post one time for a month and you're like, how come nobody's coming to me? Well, you've literally posted one time in a month, right? That's why. If you post 10 times in a day, that might be overkill, right? But if you're actually putting legitimate content out there, the more consistently you do it, whether it's daily, whether it's 2 times a day, right? And whether it's a reel in your stories or whatever the case may be, and then utilizing all the other platforms, you're probably going to catch more fish or get more customers or make money, and honestly, all the above, right? I mean, and that's kind of the approach you guys take with Virginia Tech as well. Just obviously, at scale at a Division I school.
No, I agree. I've had different bosses who've had different philosophies on that. Less is more, quantity over quality, actually. So it's been interesting kind of being coached up by a variety of people and kind of their perspective on it. But I think you're right. There's a medium. I mean, 1 an hour is not enough. 35 an hour is too much. 5 is probably the sweet spot. So we try to, find that sweet spot as much as we can. On game day, there's going to be more content, right? So, it's kind of more the off season, if you will. Like what's that cadence like? Is it daily? Is it every other day? Somewhere in between. So I'm with you. I think that's a great way to build a brand is be consistent, try to post a good amount, but not too much, and good things will happen.
Sure. So if somebody's looking to do that, they're looking to be more consistent, what processes, systems would you recommend for them to utilize? What do you guys utilize? What's the easiest? Because everybody says, I'm not a graphic designer. I don't know how to use Canva. Or I don't know how to do Adobe Pro Premiere and edit and add all this stuff in there at the same time. And at times it can be overwhelming. So what would be your thought process recommendation?
I think YouTube's a great teacher. I know that it takes time to maybe watch a 30-minute video or an hour, but I think you can't go on your own page. You can pause it, right? You can test it out and then come back to it. So I think YouTube's a great way to learn, whether it's in Photoshop, whether it's in Canva. There's a variety of tools, but we typically use Photoshop. I think most kids these days, when they go to college and they take a major that's kind of specialized in social media or business or creative type of areas that you usually have to have Adobe downloaded. So whether it's InDesign, Illustrator, Photoshop, Premiere, you
Sure.
name it. So I think,
Yeah.
most kids are getting a lot of good reps before they enter, after college. So I think Photoshop's great. YouTube's great. That's probably my best recommendation. And it doesn't have to be that crazy. I think, a lot of times people maybe
Yeah.
get lost and it has to have a ton of stuff on the graphic, but at the same time, and I think there's beauty and simplicity and having less is more. Make sure it's easy to read. If it's a number, make sure it's big, or if it's, text, make sure it's, easy to read. So I think sometimes we can kind of get lost in that too, because there's a ton of ability to put a ton of stuff into it. There's a bunch of layers and things, but I think
Oh
less is
yeah.
more in that regard.
Yeah. Yeah. So you're saying if you're making a post, whatever it's going to be, right, and you're doing a graphic, you're doing a cover post, less is
Yep.
more, simplicity wins. Big, bold, right, and go from
Mm-hmm.
there. Clean is better than too much, right? And I think that's really important. I think one thing, and I'm just thinking of this as now is I
Mm-hmm.
think a lot of people try to struggle, or they obviously want to grow a social media following to then take that
Yep.
following and be able to monetize that following, right? Like I think that's a lot of
Yep.
people's thought process, which absolutely, right? I think a lot of people's conversion is not good. So they may have a large following, they may have a small following. You don't need a large following, right? There's people that make a lot of money with 1,000 followers, 1,500 followers, or whatever the case may be.
Yep.
But um, what do you guys do at the collegiate level that says, hey, if you follow us on social and you want to buy a ticket, go here. Do you guys recommend 5 call to actions? Do you guys, because I think a lot of people do this, right? Do you recommend 1 call to action, tell the customer to do one thing, or do you say, do this and you could do that, do this and you could do that? Or, I'm going to kind of talk about that a little bit because I think a lot of people struggle with this.
Yeah, it's hard. The data we've seen and there's certain articles we've read,
Yeah.
pretty much says if you offer a bunch of things at once, nothing's going to happen. It's kind of like you said, it's overwhelming.
Yeah.
So what's the most crucial thing we're trying to get out of the consumer when
Sure.
we get a FaceTime with them? So again, less is more. So typically we try to do one thing.
Yep.
For example, we specialize in pop-ups quite a bit on our website. So currently, if you go to our football page, there's going to be a pop-up that says, do you want to stay connected with the Hokies? Sign up for receiving highlights and newsletters and those kind of things. All you got to do is enter your email.
Sure.
That's it. So type in your email, hit submit, and it says, thank you. You'll start getting stuff. And then we got a kickback email that says, thanks for signing up. We look forward to, sending you stuff, those kind of things. So that's pretty easy. But, someone else, a different company, if you go up there, and may have 5 or 6 fields like, hey,
Yeah.
we want your, phone name, your zip code, your email. And we do that a little bit, but, we try to think about leaps. It needs to be small baby steps before you get them to do something that drastic. So that's kind of how we approach it. And I think that's, other people can pick up on that too. I think that's a good way to do it.
So, yeah, I agree with that too. The amount of effort somebody has to put in to stay connected, you want to try and reduce that barrier as much as possible. Whereas if I'm like, what's your first name, your last name, your email, your phone number, your zip code, your social security number, you're going to be like, I'm not doing that. Only because it's going to take you so much longer to input that information, which is, obviously don't ask people for their social security number. But the point is like the more fields at times can be challenging. And then there's times where like you need that information, obviously, if they order a product or, whatever the case might be. So, okay. One thing I'd really love for you to hit on, emails, email marketing, email lists. Is it important for people to grow an email list? If you're building a personal brand, if you are Virginia Tech Hokies, if you are name another university, school, individual, company, how important is building an email list? Everybody's like, I'm going to hit social. I'm going to do all the TikTok dances and all the YouTube and all the Facebook and, all this stuff. But how important do you think it is to build an email list?
Yeah, it's huge. When we look at the data, people are more inclined to pull a trigger on buying a ticket from an email. Most of our traffic on purchases does not come from social. Now paid ads, sure, a little bit, but we primarily see it coming from emails. So if you send an email to, let's say, 700 people to begin the month of February, and then March 1, you send another email, and it's to 700 people, it's not good, right? You're not increasing your database. So how are you going to get more people coming in the funnel to be interested in your product? So you have to really focus on getting people in the funnel. So that's something we do a lot of Virginia Tech. Take pride in is trying to expand our database. And you can do that in a variety of ways. Like we said, the pop-up on the website, that's a great way to do it. We also have paid ads as well regarding that. We also do it through social or app push. So there's a ton of ways to do it. Instagram stories, another way I think people would be surprised how many clicks that can get if you have a link in there. We've seen that's been pretty effective regardless if it's buying a ticket or to sign up for a newsletter or to go on our website. So it is huge. Yep. Like you said, most people our age maybe don't think about email as much. It's kind of more social to drive engagement in terms of gaining your database. But I think really email, if you can hone that down, you'll be in a good spot.
Okay. So let's expand on that because I agree with you. I think email is the biggest thing, in all honesty. I think social is cool and great and fun, and there's a lot to it. The only thing that, with the social is that you're fighting is the algorithm. Today, Instagram can say, I don't like what you post, so we're not showing it to people. Or, people, I guess, really vote. And, the more likes, the comments, the shares, the saves, all that stuff. But regardless, as you still have an algorithm that you are fighting against essentially no matter what, right? So what would you say would be a good cadence for an email? So if somebody has an email list, let's say they have 100 people.
Sure.
What do you think? Two questions, I guess. What would you recommend, like kind of a magic number to be for people for an email list? Like, hey, should I try and get 500 people on my email list? Should I try and get 1,000? Like, what's kind of a good number? And then what's a good email cadence? Similar to the social media cadence, but what's a good email cadence? Should I email them once a week? Should I email them every day? Should I, what I'm saying? I mean, kind of what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. So to kick it off, I think the number, to me, like the number is like nice, whatever the number is. I think the key is just like the percentage point you're increasing it month over month. Like how are you kind of gaining more and more? So that's what I would put more on. So like, for example, I think we get 579,000 people in our database. We don't send that, we don't send an email to that population a ton. You got to be smart about that. Don't hit them too much. We also have some segments where we're sending to legitimately 32 people. So I think, you need to, the more you can figure out what they want to engage in, the better, because you can specialize and send them certain things. So the big number is pretty much who's, ever bought a ticket at Virginia Tech or has shown any interest at all or has bought a t-shirt. So that's all like in the big funnel. And then that 32 person list is specifically a podcast subscriber list for the Hokie Sports Insider. So we have a weekly podcast on Wednesdays that one of our radio guys, he breaks down interview session with, a few folks, whether it's a coach, an alum, a current student athlete. So that's always on every Wednesday is when we release it. So usually Wednesday evening, someone's going to have that in their inbox. So I think, timing is nice. I know you talked about that. Is it good to have maybe a certain day to send? I think it is.
Sure,
so I think just having that consistency helps, fans know they're going to get it. And then I think, trying to expand that number. So again, 32 is not a lot, especially compared to 590. But I think overall it's a good way to think, okay, can we get to 40 next month? Okay, can we get to 50? So I think kind of the percentage increase is probably more what I would, factor in on. But I think having a cadence is good, whether it's a newsletter. So again, we have 9. One of them is a football newsletter we send. That's on Wednesdays. We have a basketball newsletter we send on Tuesdays. So I think, kind of breaking down by sport is effective. Or maybe for, let's say it's a podcast person or someone else, like, okay, maybe I'm doing my workouts on this day, or maybe it's like specifically upper body on this day. Then on Thursdays, I'm going to do lower body on this day. I'm going to show you what that's like. So I think trying to specialize a little bit, so it kind of breaks up maybe the mundaneness of just sending one a week. But I think having a day specialized helps. And then within that, can you go even deeper and say it's a certain thing on a certain day?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think I think at times, I think people may be scared to send emails, right?
Yep.
Because I could post something on my story. I can, do that aspect, and maybe you post on your story and link to, a free resource, or hey, just join my newsletter, join my email list. I'm going to provide you information on, like you said, training sessions on Tuesdays and Thursdays, or if you're working in the athletics, like sport, or a book review, or I mean, there's just so much that you could do to just start growing that list and doing that aspect of it. We call that owned media, because like you're the one that like actually owns it, and so
Mm-hmm.
you can send a broadcast to everybody on your list, or like you're saying, you can segment that to say, everybody that's bought a t-shirt from me, I'm going to just email you, or everybody that's just bought a book from me, or whatever the case may be. You can break it up and just say, like, I want to offer a higher offer to these people that have spent the most money with me, probably because they will continue to spend money with you, right? Compared to the people that haven't spent money with you, you're going to say, I'm going to offer them a really low offer to get them to spend money with me, right? So maybe you offer them something for $7, maybe it's $10,
Sure.
whatever the case may be, right? And then you can start to build people up your value ladder that way. Just kind of like what you do with your customer base as well, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
if you haven't bought from us, hey, if you bought tickets, if you bought whatever the case may be, next thing you know, their entire place is filled with Virginia Tech gear and apparel and jerseys and all this stuff, and a lot of times it can be attributed to an email marketing campaign. They could have walked down the store, but the point being is now they've become so loyal to VT that they start to open up everything that you send them, right? And then they start to
Yep.
purchase more, even if they don't need it, right? And the same goes not only at a collegiate aspect, but from a personal brand standpoint, from an individual company standpoint, whatever that case may be. And I think a lot of people struggle with that, myself included in that standpoint, right? Because everybody tries to sell their services, and you try so hard, and then you're like, dude, nobody's purchased, right? So from a metric standpoint, because I think people see such low numbers with email marketing in regards of like open rate, click percentage, click rate.
Yep.
And there's a difference between clickbait and actually like providing information and good copywriting. Like that's completely
Yep.
different. So like, don't do the clickbait stuff where it's like, watch me do this, and it's something completely different. I just think you're kind of like lying then. But
Yep.
what would be a good percentage? So if let's say I have an email list of 100 people, okay, I have a following of 5,000, right, on one platform, a couple thousand on the other, but my email list is 100 people, right? What would be a good percentage of them to open, of them to click, of them to purchase? Like, what should I expect? So then, because if I see 1%, you're like, well, this isn't working, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's tough to say what's good averages.
Sure.
I mean, I could say some numbers and I will, but
Sure.
yeah, like within our newsletters, it varies quite a bit. So for example, our football one, I think it's around, I think a 33% open rate. So a third. So that's pretty good.
It's pretty good.
Click through rates, I think around 10%, which is pretty solid as well.
Yeah.
And then, the purchases is probably around 1%,
Sure.
2%. So that's kind of usually it works its way down in that regard. Open rate's probably going to be your highest number of the three.
Right.
But, we have some that are like, 9%, 12%, some that are 66. But again, that's very tailored towards a certain audience. That's like our suite holders.
Yeah.
So usually there's a lot of good information there for them regarding a game or updates to their suites and those kind of things. So it just kind of depends on who you're sending it to. And, the wider it gets, typically maybe the lower the engagement's going to be. But yeah, I think, I would hope an open rate's probably above 10% if you can.
Sure.
I think that would probably be a good minimum. If the click through rate, 2-5%, maybe it is 10%. So that can vary too. And then pull a trigger is probably going to be, on the lowest of those three. But yeah, I think an open rate above 10% would be ideal.
Yeah, and this is exactly why it's important to build a bigger list, right? And so if we let's just use that 33%. So to give people an idea, if you have 100 people on an email list, okay, 33% open. Okay, that's
Yep.
33 individuals that opened from that 100. Okay, of those 33 individuals, what do we say, like 10% of them, right,
Yep.
are actually going to click on something. So, excuse me. So 10% are going to click on something. So 33, that's 3.3 people. So 3 or 4 people are actually going to click on what you said, go here, right? Purchase
Yep.
now. Look at, so now you've converted them, or you've taken them from the email to a website, to a paywall, to
Yep.
a blog, to something, right? Where you're now asking them for money. Of those 3.3 people, or 3 to 4 people, probably one is going to purchase, right?
Yep.
Now, whatever your offer is, could either be, you could have just made $100, or you could just have made
Sure.
7, depends on the offer, right? So that's why it's really important when you guys, both at the collegiate level and individuals from a personal brand standpoint, start to build this list, right? Because now expand that. So if you went from 100 to 1,000, right? Instead of 33 people that opened it, 333 people opened it, right? And that's a lot better. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
So then from those 333, now 33 people have clicked on it. Okay. Well, now 33 people are, on your paywall. And of that, probably 3 to 4 of those individuals are purchasing that aspect of it. Well, if you have a $200 offer, 4 people purchase, that's $800. You made $800 from one email, right?
Yep.
Now, obviously, there's
Yep.
stuff that happens before and after. You can't just say buy, right? There's stuff that happens before and after. You have to nurture that. But
Yep.
the difference really then is, hey, I now have 1,000 people and I just made 800 from a one email. That's, pretty good. If you had, 1,500 people on your list, you just do the, if you had 10,000 on your list, right? Do the math, you do it. A general rule of thumb from what I've heard, what I've read, and correct me if I'm wrong, is for every person that you have on your list, you should expect to make at least $1 per person per month. That's kind of the idea of
Sure.
that, right? Is like, if Lance is on my list, my goal is to make, the thought is I've now made $1 per month per person.
Yeah.
Right? That's kind of the general rule of thumb. Now, is that perfect? No, of course not. But some people will spend 800. Some people won't ever spend with you, right? But that's also why when Lance is talking and when people are saying social is important, but you got to get them off of social too, right? And that's even more important, whether you're a university or whether you are, an individual selling your services. You got to get them off of the social platform and into their email if you're looking to convert them, have them as clients and customers, and actually start to monetize your following while still providing them value.
Yep. Yeah, a word like that you used was nurturing.
Yeah. Yep.
We really hit that hard, I feel like, in terms of, we call it like web nurturing.
Yeah.
So what that typically means could be, hey, we saw you on this page, and it's a kickback, a few days later saying, we noticed you were here, are you interested in this? Would you want to sign up for this? So we really try to hone that in. And that's based off of automated emails. So, we currently send a lot manually, these newsletters and those kind of things, but we're trying to do more and more that's automated. And that, I think that's just, it's a great way to get people in the funnel. If we saw notice you were trying to buy a fan 4-pack for football, what about going to seasons, which would be 2 more games, but you get a discounted price, blah, blah, blah. So that's a big component, like you said, and then trying to incorporate deals as well helps. So kind of back to what we talked about earlier was the field. It's like, if it's one field, it's not too over the top. You're not going to feel overwhelmed. You're probably going to fill it out. But if it's like 5 or 6, that's a lot. But if it is a lot, let's say there's an incentive. If you fill this out, you sign up for a chance to win, $500 and a flight to a game or something.
Yeah.
So I think having incentives for people as well is going to help, whether they're filling out a survey, whether they're trying to, buy something. I think those are really effective too.
Yeah, absolutely. And you said something there, and you guys do send some manual emails, and then you also automate emails, and nurturing is, obviously extremely important. Because I think, what does a customer journey look like, and how do you guys kind of build that out, right? So if I am, how does that look, right? Whether it's from a collegiate setting, a personal brand setting, what do you guys kind of recommend from that standpoint?
Yep. Yeah, I can say what we do,
Sure.
and then kind of say for just an individual.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think, mapping out that journey is super, super critical, because I think it helps with your cadence. It helps you kind of get out of the weeds of day to day, helps you think long term. So if you break it down for football, we take a lot of pride in our customer journey week to week. So again, we have a few newsletters that go out, so that's a part of their journey. So typically on Mondays, we'll send out a game preview article, as well as Game Day Central. This is for a home football game. Yep. So it kind of goes over who we're playing, what time's the game, and who's on the call. Is it ESPN? Is it Chris Fowler? Is it, Kirk Herbstreit, whoever? Or some things to know about the matchup. The Hokies are seeking revenge. They lost last year to whoever it is. Here are some players that played well last game. So that's kind of getting the feelers going. Okay, we got a game in 6 days. This is some things that kind of gets you excited about the game.
Yeah.
And then the next day, we'll send a Maroon and Orange Memories email. And what that is, that's the ability to upgrade. So, hey, maybe this is your first time in Lane Stadium. You can actually be on the field to experience Inter Sandman, for whatever it costs, sign up to do so. Or you can get your, name on the video board. Let's say your brother's birthday is Saturday, you want to have it on the video board. That's an experience you can buy. So we try to get some upgrades from folks on that Tuesday. Wednesday's our newsletter. So that's the key plays article. That's what it's called. When it comes to the press conference from earlier in the week, maybe the sound bites article of that, a series snapshot article, like what's the series been over the years against Georgia Tech. Yeah. Maybe some other information there. Maybe like you want to buy, season tickets or something like that for next year. Or you want to buy, some apparel. So we try to always have some things you can buy as well within that. So I think we try to have content we're going to give you. And then within that, there's going to be some ticketing or some RevGen things that you can pull a trigger on too. Yeah. And then Thursday or Friday is usually like a 5 things to know article. So, hey, this is when the gates open at Hokie Village, which is kind of more family centric. Here's who's going to be there. There's some food trucks. Here's the band, those kind of things. So we kind of have a day by day cadence. If you're pretty much getting an email almost every day, and it kind of varies on what it is, but it's hoping that the fan feels good before they walk in to say, what they can get out of it. So that's kind of that's our journey. We have a new donor journey. I think it might be over a year. We send maybe 15 emails. So it's about it's a little over one a month. Yeah. And that kind of goes, okay, welcome. We're glad you're a donor. The next one's like, this is how you kind of stay connected. The next one's like, here's some events we have upcoming. The next one's like, how's your experience going so far? So there's a cadence to that. Yep. And then when we do launch emails, we might do a teaser the night before, like, hey, we're about to launch something, sign up to be the first to know. And then we launch that, whatever it is. And then those are open. We're going to send them, go down this, kind of part of the tree. We're going to send them this cadence for those that didn't open. We're going to send them an email again a week later. So we kind of, we evolve it as well based on engagement too. So it's kind of, it can get pretty intense of how in depth it can be. But, if it's really thought out well, again, it gets you out of the weeds, makes you think long term. It can be very effective to have someone have a good customer experience, month to month. But to translate that to an individual, some of it kind of depends on how big your list is. What's the thing you're talking about? You're talking about food and nutrition, or you're talking about strength and conditioning? Sure. Maybe it's both. So I think that's important. And then when someone gets in the funnel, I think there should always be a kickback, like, hey, like, thanks for signing up for my podcast. We appreciate your support. Here's some other ways to get involved. Yep. And then you can do, doing surveys is important. What kind of things do you think we can do better at? Yeah. That's a great way to change, and evolve what your product is. So there's no perfect way to do it, but I think, just kind of, again, thinking through what that customer experience could be, super beneficial.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think I think a lot, but I mean, understanding kind of the psychological component behind it, understanding, hey, you can set this stuff up relatively easy. In all honesty, right? If I have a opt-in
Yep.
form, an opt-in page that Lance comes on and says, hey, if you subscribe to the podcast, if you want to work with me, if you think the value up, whatever the case may be, hey, enter your email. Here's a free resource, whether it's
Yep.
a report, whether it's an ebook, whether it's a free training program, whatever the case may be, right? Something where they get value right away, right? Because that's the exchange that's occurring, right? Is, hey, thank you so much for your email. Here's this free whatever the case may be. And then from there, it's an automated email. You could say, hey, thank you so much for being a part of the community. This is how most members stay engaged with us. And it's maybe a call to action to join the Facebook group, a call to action to, purchase something right away, a call to action to write a review, whatever the case may be. Because from that standpoint, then if they're warmed up and they've already purchased something, if they've already given you their email, if from that aspect, while the stove is hot, strike essentially, right? So, hey, awesome. You like this? Maybe you'll like this hat. Maybe you'll like this t-shirt. Maybe you'll like, what this, training program or whatever the case may be, whatever you're selling essentially, because they will typically then purchase, right? Which is what you essentially want. And then you can just start to, add them into your value ladder with a more and more and more expensive item each time, because they've already broken that barrier of, I've given you my email and I've purchased, and then you can continue to recommend up to them. It's like, you ever gone to get your oil changed? They're really good at this, in all honesty. You go in there for an oil change. Hey, we need to change your filters in your car. Okay. Hey, we need to, you need new windshield wipers. Okay. Hey, you need this, you need that. Next thing you know, you went for a $70 oil change and you're dropping $400, right? Because what do? They say, we'll do a free diagnostic on your vehicle. And then they say, oh, this isn't working properly. Hey, we can fix that for you today, right now. Oh, it's X, right? I mean, that's exactly what they do, and it's effective because a lot of people are like, I went for an oil change and I spent $400. Like, it happens all the time, man.
It's like walking into Target and you're hungry, and you get a couple things, and then you buy 80 things, right?
Yeah, same thing. Yeah, grocery shopping when you're hungry, Target, right? Because they do such a great job of, like, because you're already purchasing, right? Oh, you thought these shoes were cool? Well, that shoe was going to go great with this pair of jeans, which is going to go great with that shirt. So you might as well get all three of them, and now you got a fresh fit. And you're like, yeah, it's a good idea. It's only $50 more, whatever the case may be. But in Target, it's like $500. But it's the purpose.
Walmart.
What's up?
It ain't Walmart. That's right.
It ain't Walmart, I'll tell you that much. But for people that I guess aren't understanding this, is that aspect of it, the journey, the how do I get them from not just being a social media follower of mine, but to actually now joining my email list, becoming a customer of mine, and helping me help them. And I help them through the information which I put out, or working with them. They help me by, providing me with monetary value, which is, in exchange of that. So super interesting stuff. One question I have for you guys, because the digital media space is constantly changing. There's constant updates. What are you, because Lance manages 4 people, but how do you guys as a department, you individually, your team, stay up to date with new trends? What do you guys do to help move the ball forward in your roles? Because the social media landscape changes probably more often than we change our clothes, right? So it's ever growing. What does that look like, and how do you help your team get better each day?
Yep. Yeah, Packy Owen is our rep that does the ads and helps us with tickets.
Yeah.
They typically have every couple of weeks like a case study on things. So we most of my folks, we usually read that. That's usually effective, like a best practice on how to do something. A few of us are signing up to newsletters.
Yeah.
Like that's about social, or it's about email marketing, or it's about ads or mobile apps. A lot of us subscribe to what the pro space is doing. That's a great way to see what the best in the biz are approaching lead gen, doing sweepstakes, those kind of things.
Yeah.
So I'd probably say those 3 buckets is probably the best way to do it, as well as, benchmarking with our colleagues. One of my friends used to work at Georgia Tech. We used to talk quite a bit about what they're doing that's, best in class and those kind of things.
Yeah.
So I think always trying to talk to people in your field network, see what they're up to is an effective tool too.
Yeah, absolutely. Anything you'd recommend for people to start to look into? Should they, if they're an individual, should they start following what universities are doing? Should they start following what influencers are doing? What does that look like?
Yeah, you can really draw inspiration from anywhere. I think that's the beauty of it
Yeah.
all. So
Yeah.
right now I'm wearing a Nike t-shirt and a North Face hat. And North Face obviously has nothing to do with my field, but if I go to their website, I might see, that's a pretty good way to do that. And then I'm going to go implement that at Virginia Tech. So I think you can really start from anywhere, whether you're following an influencer on TikTok and you think the way they go about a video is smart or their captions are really good.
Sure.
If you're on a website and you think Sports Illustrated does a great job with their ads and the pop-ups they have within it. So really, you can really draw from anywhere. But I think, trying to think about maybe what you wear or what you do, and maybe following that whatever it is in every platform. So you're following them on Twitter, are you following them on the website, or have you signed up for their newsletter yet? So really trying to get the most out of the experience that they offer, I think is a good way to do it too.
Yeah. So for that, I agree with you. But what I want people to understand is what he's saying is not just go and sign up for every single newsletter, just say I've now subscribed, but to actually start to look at them and break them down and say, how can I implement this with what I want to do, what I am currently doing? And so what he means by that, if I go to North Face, instead of just going on there and being a consumer and consuming everything, it's taking a step back, pausing and saying, what does this look like for them? Okay, I land on the landing page. What happens? Oh, boom, a pop-up happens. Okay. What does the text look like? Is it a question based? What are they trying to get me to do? Right. And start to break it down section by section by section, and say, how can I now implement this with what I'm trying to do? Same thing with videos on social, same thing with Twitter posts, same thing with email marketing. If you sign up for people's emails, start breaking down what type of emails are you getting from them? How can you start to apply this for yourself, right? And say, okay, are they offering me something to purchase every email? Are they giving me another place to go? Like, what does that process look like? Because I think you can start to learn a lot when you start to study these other people or these other companies or these other universities. It's no different than whatever field you're in. I'm in strength and conditioning, and I look at a ton of other people's stuff and, oh, what are they doing? Why are they doing it? Not just, oh, that's really cool, but like, why are you doing that? Like, what is that? What is the purpose of that? And a lot of times I just reach out to them. I think we have so much access nowadays. I might not just reach out to North Face, but I have access to reach out to another coach and ask a question. Hey, I saw X, Y, and Z. Like, can you tell me a little bit more about that? Sure, absolutely. And now you can start to learn and build a relationship from that standpoint as well. Kind of the same thing if you're doing it from like a video standpoint. So one other question I'm very curious of, because is inside of all this stuff, we have to have the words on the pages. We have to have the words in the emails. We have to have the words on the posts. Called copywriting, for those of you that don't know. How important is it? What should it say? What should it do? What is kind of the purpose of that? How important do you think copywriting is? Or is it more so, the content in itself? Like, kind of walk me through that aspect of it.
Yeah, I think copywriting is everything. You have to be informative, witty, fun, clever. all within a few words, So it's pretty tough, but the more reps you get at, the better you get at it. But I think there's a variety of ways to do it, and I think owning your voice, what we want to do is important. So, for example, I used to be in PR and I switched to digital 2 years ago, and one of the first meetings we had was kind of writing out, okay, what is our kind of mission statement? What are our core objectives? Or are we always going to come back to when we think about copy? So there's 3 things that we came down with. And one was to celebrate our student athletes, their success, our coaches, our programs. One is to engage. So are we doing engaging things 365? And then the last one's to convert, to get them in the funnel so they become a purchaser of a T-shirt, then hopefully tickets, then a season ticket holder, then a donor, then they give us a huge gift, and we're all doing okay. So that's where it all starts from. So I think all that stuff comes back to the funnel, and it comes back to being consistent in copy and having good copywriting. So I think it's very, very important. I think for us, we have kind of like a branding doc, what things not to use, how slang can we get, kind of an emoji family. Our copywriting changes per platform. So the way I write, a workout video for football is going to be different when I do it on Facebook to Instagram. So Instagram, I might say something like, grind, don't stop. And then do like an emoji with the smoke coming out of the nose, right?
Yeah.
And then on Facebook, I'm going to say, our guys are working so hard, in the gym, with an exclamation point. So I think it's really important to change copy based on the platform, because as the data tells us, IG is super young, Twitter's in the middle, and then Face is pretty old. So I think you have to change your copy for that. So I think that's important. And then I think with another component we try to be intentional on is specifically for an app push. So, and this can go on subject line too for email, but how much are you going to give away? So for example, today I sent out a push about our transfers, right? They're getting honored tonight at the men's basketball game. We welcome 7 transfers this spring semester. We had a spring ball, tap to see who they are.
Sure.
I could have, in the copy, said who the 7 are, and then they're not going to tap and go to the website, right?
Right, of course.
So on that hand, it makes it easier on the user, right? They know who it is. It's less work. It's just one step. But they don't come to the website, and then we can feed them from there. So I think just being especially intentional on how much of your cards do you want to show on the front end. So I think about that as you guys write copy and those kind of things. So that's something we've kind of done as of late, and it's been pretty effective.
Yeah, absolutely. And to that, what you're saying, and I don't mean to put words in your mouth here, but what you're saying is pique curiosity, right? If you say, help us welcome these 7 guys and here's who they are, well, you pique the curiosity to say, help us welcome these 7 guys. And then you just told them. So the loop, right? So this is kind of the psychology, but when you put something out there to pique curiosity, you're opening a psychological loop to say, I'm interested in finding out X, whatever that may be, right?
Yep.
And what you're saying is, instead of closing that loop in that email, which would have been, here are the 7 guys we're going to welcome, you're saying, click here to go to our website, right? This is in a collegiate space, but you can do this elsewhere as well. Instead of closing that loop in that email, in that Instagram post, in that Twitter, in that, whatever the case may be, hey, open the loop and then close it someplace else. Now, there are times where if I open a loop on Instagram and I say, join for my newsletter or subscribe or whatever the case may be, I can close the loop there. So if you open it, you do have to close the loop, right? So for people to understand, you can't just always open loop, because then people are going to be, that's just clickbait, right?
Yes, that's right. There's a balance.
And you do have to close it, but you can close it on a website, on a landing page, to get to their funnel, to get them to purchase, to get them to do something else. And then you can reopen that loop again, right? So if I push you to the website and then it's, here are the 7, and maybe it's a carousel of each 7 of them, underneath that, I can open the next loop, right? And say, purchase your Virginia Tech gear here, or get exclusive gear for tonight's whatever, click here to purchase sends you to another, funnel for them to purchase, because now you've reopened a loop, and then you can close it elsewhere, right? So as you're writing copy, as you're getting people to take action steps, you have to open a loop by piquing that curiosity, and then you have to close the loop, right, by actually giving them the information, but you can close it on another page, which is something that you're probably going to offer them, in all honesty, right? Didn't mean
Yep.
to,
No, that's exactly right.
Yeah, it's really interesting. It's really unique. So, I had a question. I can't remember what it was though. But so copy is important. Copy is really, really, really important. And I think you said something. You said Instagram is young, Twitter's in the middle, and Facebook is old. And are you talking that in regards of the audiences that typically use those platforms, or just the length in which those platforms have been up and running?
That's I didn't think about that. That's a good point too. I guess both, right?
Sure.
But yeah, Face 40, 50, 60. That's probably the most common app they're going to use. Twitter's probably 20, 30, 40.
Sure.
But then IG's more teens, 20, 30. So yeah, I think that's important. And then another thing too, besides copy, is does this asset fit everywhere? So for example, if we do a funny video of one of our players pranking one of our other players, is that going to fit on everywhere? I'm not sure. Maybe it does. Maybe it does. Maybe it's just TikTok and that's it.
Sure.
I think too, there's a seriousness level of some of those platforms. TikTok's a little bit more relaxed. It can kind of be more fun. It doesn't have to really match with the brand. It's a word to a football team, So I think catering to that as well, kind of deciphering maybe it fits on IG Reels and TikTok and that's it. But if we throw this on Twitter, it might get blasted that all we do is dance and we don't practice enough. Yeah. So I think there's a balance there too. So it goes beyond copy.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I think that's really important, because something can blow up on Twitter, and something can be really positive on Twitter and people love it. And then you post it on a TikTok and people trash it. And you post it on an IG and it falls flat. And you post it on Facebook and it falls flat. So the content in itself, should people cross promote, and I don't mean promote as in follow me here and here. I mean, I think you should do that, but should the same content essentially then go on all of the platforms, I guess, is a question. Because I do that at times. Sometimes I'll test one on one platform. Like, for instance, I'll put something on Twitter, and if it blows up on Twitter, it does well. I'm like, well, Instagram typically will like this, because a lot of times my stuff that does well on Twitter will do well on Instagram too. And then there's other times where it's the complete opposite. Instagram loved it, Twitter absolutely nothing, and then vice versa. So should the same content go on the same stuff? Should the copy be the same, on an Instagram reel post as Twitter? I mean, obviously we kind of already stated no, but I think a lot of people want to hit that easy button, myself included. I'm just like, copy, paste, post,
That's right.
And at times it doesn't do well.
Yeah. And I think there's a balance, I think as you continue to post stuff, you kind of get a feel for what may do well, what may not. And then you're going to have some surprises too. Actually, I did well in all three. That's kind of nice. So it just kind of depends. And then another thing too within that is, do you have enough assets to cater stuff to certain platforms? So for example, articles do pretty well on Facebook. Videos don't do as well. Yep. So if I have a 45-second workout video of our first workout of the off season for football, I'm going to put that in an article that's, short and sweet, maybe 3 paragraphs, and it's got the video within there.
Yep.
And I'm probably going to post that on Facebook because it's an article. It's going to do well, and then people will see the vid. If I post the vid as is, it might get 12 likes in a day, and that's terrible. But the article might get 216 comments. So I think we've seen that enough where it's like, okay, we need to reevaluate. One size does not fit all. So I think generally speaking it does, but maybe there's 20% of it where it shouldn't.
Sure, the repurposing aspect of it is where you're seeing it is where people struggle, because as a single individual, if you're just trying to do this on your own, you're spending hours repurposing content, rewriting content, putting an email together. Oh, for this platform, it's this for that platform. And then people are like, dude, you spend all day on your phone, and you're like, I know, I'm just trying to put this stuff out, right? Like, because I mean, that's what happens to a lot of people. So, last couple of questions, but should people focus on one platform first? Or should they start to dabble in others? And then second question, for those that are scared to post, they're scared of what other people will think. They are scared what other people might say. Like, what are you trying to do? They're scared to, kind of put that out there. What are your kind of thoughts on that? Or what should people do? Should they post and go? I mean, interested to hear.
Yeah. I mean, I think I would probably say no to the first question, which is, should you focus just solely on one platform?
Yeah.
I think the root of that is good. Should I spend a bunch of time on doing 9 things? Probably not. Hone in on what your strong suit is, right?
Yep.
So, for example, if a new emerging platform comes along, let's see if it's actually legit. So for TikTok, we didn't make one. Maybe the first year is out. We wanted to see if it was going to stick, and obviously it has, and it's a big one. But I think, kind of this deciding on which stuff's worthy is good. Understanding, what performs well on certain platforms. So 5 years ago, it was primarily pictures, right? That was IG based.
Yep.
It was just you scrolling to see pictures of your friends from what they did this weekend. And now it's not that at all.
Yeah.
So I think you got to evolve as well. So I think that's one component of doing it. So I think, that's probably the biggest thing is, be patient on what stuff you want to maybe jump on an emerging platform or a trend as well. Just because there's this trend, I'm trying to think of a recent trend. I'm blanking on one, but if someone drops an album and it's, let's say it's Drake or Taylor Swift, a lot of times teams will, put a player on instead of Drake or Taylor, right? Yeah. And then it goes viral. So I think that's funny, but you don't have to do every single one. So I think be selective on what trends you want to hop onto, right. Which is good. So, and what was the second part of the question?
For those people that are scared to post.
Scared to post, yep.
Yeah, they're scared of what somebody might say. Everybody has 2 or 3 people that pops to their head like, oh, what are they going to say? Are they going to like this? Like, that aspect of things. Very curious from that standpoint. Because I myself at times I'm like, I should post this. But I'm scared of what so-and-so is going to think.
Yeah. I mean, that's natural. I think from a sports perspective, you probably don't think of it as much, which is kind of nice. Sure. But yeah, from an individual perspective, I know that's pretty common. Is this worthwhile? Is it going to get backlash? Is it who I really am? Yeah. What people are going to say. So I think that's fine. I mean, I would say, the saying is shoot or shoot, right? So, I would say let it rip would be my rule of thumb for individual. And people don't like it, well, they can unfollow you, right? So I think do what your heart pleases would be probably my advice.
Yeah. And also I would say like, and maybe you can help on this too. Our minds, I got content I am going to post. I'm so excited. This is going to hit. It's going to go viral. Which we know probably it won't, but we like build it up in ourselves so much, right? And then you throw it out there and you get 20 likes, 15, whatever your standard of bad is, right?
Yep.
For those, when that happens, what's your recommendation for people? Because I think it happens more often than people would like to admit.
Yeah, I was actually talking to my interns a few days ago. And I told them the analogy I love is you got to be a DB. You get burned on one series, you love a touchdown. All right, you got to flush it. Got to get back to the next drive. You're the best DB in the world, right? So I would say that would be my point of thumb for that because, you're going to have flops and you're going to be pumped about something you've put a ton of time into and people don't resonate with it. And doesn't mean you shouldn't do something similar again because maybe that's the one that does go viral. So I think, you got to have a quick memory and flush it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's huge. That's actually a really good analogy. Like, that's actually a really, really good analogy.
Thank you.
No, seriously, right? Because there's DBs get burned, man, and then they got to come back and their confidence. And I think they probably are the most confident players on the field. They're freaking.
They got it. You have to be.
You
Yep,
have to be. So if you are going to start to put stuff out there, be a DB, man. Be a DB. Throw it out there.
Yep.
With the thought process of, I'm going to test this. If it hits, great. I'm going to repeat that, right? So if you do a video that, it hits, probably do one pretty similar to that. It might hit as well. Maybe tweak a thing or two, or maybe try something up, right? Like, so if it flops, take it as a learning lesson. And what we're really starting to say is, you have to become emotionally detached to what you're throwing out there. Even though you put the time in, even though you did this, and that's fantastic, but you have to become emotionally detached. If you're doing this from an individual perspective, from a team perspective, if you're in Lance's position, and you're throwing out their sports, it's probably going to do well, only because of the times that the followings are just so big consistently, right? So you guys will probably do well. But if you're doing this as an individual, you have to emotionally detach from it, and just say, I'm going to try this. If it works, great. If it doesn't, then you know what? I'm going to go back to the drawing board and try again. So,
yeah, one thing I want to hit on with that is social listening. So again, there's truth to both sides. There's pros and cons of everything. Social listening is a component that I think a lot of people probably individually put a lot of stock in. From a sports team, I think probably less.
Sure.
Everyone's offense coordinator sucks. I mean, everyone sucks, right? No one scores 56 a game. Yeah. No one never has a 3 and out, right? So, I think you have to take things with a grain of salt. But I think from an individual perspective, you're building your brand. It is good. It is really good to see what other people are saying. A lot of people are going to say positive things, and there's going to be some that are negative, but you got to take those negatives with a grain of salt, but it might be legit good feedback that's going to help you with your next video or your next graphic or next post. So I think social listening, kind of keeping tabs on that stuff is important. But, it can, from a mental health perspective, it can beat you up too. So take it with a grain of salt.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we've all seen the effects of that, right? Everybody now wants to be IG famous, and if they're not, they're, all this and everything else. So it's really interesting or TikTok famous, right? If my first vid on TikTok doesn't go viral, then my value as an individual is less, and it's just like, oof, okay. So that's a really good point. Really good point. So, that's all that I had, my man. Anything you wanted to close in on?
Well, I mean, I think thinking back to Bethel, what a great experience that was for you and I.
Yeah.
I was there for 4 years. Came in as a freshman, as a punk tool, if you will. And I really think I came out as a man with Coach Jay, who's a tremendous head football coach, who's a great teacher of men. He's made so many of us the guys who we are today. So gotta give him a shout out.
He just got the Coach of the Year award. Did you see that?
Yeah, pretty sick, right?
Yeah, that's
pretty sick. So I know I left in, I guess, 14 fall was my last year. And they had a little bit of a dip after that. But, man, they've had some really good years as of late. So as a proud alum, it's really cool to see them get back to being good again.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, they've been killing it, on a multitude of sports, too, from a football standpoint.
Yep.
Absolutely. And he's such an incredible man. And he just the way he communicates, the way that he pours his heart into everything. Because I believe, he's a football coach, but the way that he pours into his athletes is he just wants you to be better men, and just wants you to learn how to be a man, be a better man. And I, very thankful for my time there, to meet a guy like you, but then to also, meet men like him. And there's so many other men on that staff that are the same way. And it just goes to show that you can go have a great experience playing college athletics, whether you're Division I to Division III, NAIA, JUCO, and you can come out a better man. And I think that's really the most important component of it. Or woman.
Yep. I mean, it gives you a good foundation to go out into the world and be able to handle adversity. I think, a lot of times that can get in your head and keep you down. But Football is a great teacher. Bethel's a great school to learn from. So definitely have a good background that's helped both of us, I feel like, in a lot of ways.
Yeah, and it's really cool to see people from our alma mater being successful. So JD Melhorn, I don't know if you're familiar with it.
Yep.
I know you are. He is head strength and conditioning coach at Georgia State, and has been there for several years now.
Maybe 4 years. I think it was at UConn before that. So
4 years. And he's doing really well. And that's awesome to see. Him and I are kind of in the same space, but we're at least all of us in college athletics. So, and that's really cool. And there's so many others out there, but he was the first one that comes to mind. So proud Bethel alums, man, trying to do some good things in the world,
Yeah, I'll give one more shout out, Bethel alums, Jay Hilbrands, who's at Washington, so he lives out in Seattle.
Yeah,
I'm going to go see him this April for their spring game. He's a senior associate AD for external, so he would kind of be like my boss's boss if he was at Tech, but oversees a bunch of things out there, communications, video, design, you name it. So he's got a lot got pressure on him, but he's doing very well up there, and he's killing it.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, see, there we go. Absolutely killing it. So if you want to be successful, go to Bethel.
That's right.
It's not your only indication, but hey, say for those that are listening, watching, if you guys got value out of this, I think there was a tremendous amount of value from a multitude of fronts, from social media, from email marketing, from psychology, from a lot of things to help you monetize your following. Do us a huge favor, hit the like button, hit subscribe, drop a comment, for you to find out more who else is coming on. Join my email list, because I'll let you know who's coming on before you even know it. So that's exciting as well. But again, if you guys like this, or if you got value from it, please engage with us. Give us a like, give us a comment, give us a share, and then join my list as well, because then you'll get some exclusive stuff, and we've got some cool things coming in the works for you guys. But Lance, I want to appreciate you for your time. Thanks for coming on, man. Love catching up with you, but also love hearing your insights on what you're doing at VT, and how you guys are excelling, how you are excelling individually, but then as a school, and just love also just getting to chat with you, my man.
Yeah, great talking to you. It's always fun catching up, and I enjoy getting to talk about what I do with other folks, and hopefully they can learn a thing or two from it. But go Army, beat Navy.
Yeah, it's all right, man. So appreciate you. Thanks, man. We'll catch you guys in the next one.